Howdy folks. Today I'm going to go through with you on roughly what you can expect if you decide to publish, specifically publishing a paperback novel, with KDP or Kindle Direct Publishing. Before we get into it, I should preface that this is not an in-depth look into how to publish with KDP, but rather a proof of concept video to give you a general idea of what would be in store should you choose to publish on Kindle. If you do decide to go down this route, I highly recommend looking up more in-depth videos, as well as, in my own honest opinion, creating a short story of your very own for the sole purpose of acting as a kind of practice novel or novella, so you can get to grips with what works best for you on the site and how you find you best work with the parameters and the options given by KDP. So, with that out of the way, let's get into it. Firstly, and before you can publish with KDP, you first have to create an account with them. This can be done via a pre-existing Amazon account, but will still involve providing additional information such as business type, whether it's individual or corporation, essentially whether it's by yourself or with your larger company. Account holder, which is essentially just your entire full name, you know, Mrs. such and such, blah blah blah, or Mr. such and such. Your bank details is done so they can provide payment if your book does sell. And finally, tax information. This is usually so that they can add things such as VAT onto any purchases that are made for your book if you do decide to publish one. Again, viewing a far more in-depth guide is recommended in addition to watching this video. As again, this is just to give you a rough idea of what to expect when you do decide to publish with KDP. Now we move on to the actual publication side of things. I've chosen to cover the requirements for publishing a paperback, as the process behind that and an ebook, in publishing an ebook, are similar up to a point, and the differences between publishing a paperback and a hardback are virtually non-existent. Now, for publishing your creative output with KDP, you will be asked to provide the language of the book, essentially what language is it in English or French, etc., the book's title, as well as any subtitles you've decided to give it, whether or not it's part of a pre-existing series, in which case which one, is it already with KDP or is it a standalone novel, something like that, which edition is it been published previously or is this the first time, the author's name, so essentially your own full name again, any contributors that contributed to the novel, you're allowed up to 9 of these, be aware of that. A rough description, of course, of the novel as well, to give people an idea of what it's about. The intended audience and marketplace for said novel, so essentially what age range, as well as which particular country you're going to should we sell it in. Perhaps you want it in all countries, or perhaps just a specific version. And of course, publishing rights as well, whether or not you own the work yourself, or whether or not it's public domain, that kind of thing. And there's categories as well. Think of this as like genres. So whether it's like science fiction or fantasy or something like that. There's also keywords to help people find your particular book. So is it like, if it's science fiction, for example, could be alien or robot or stuff like that. There's also large print and low content books. This was something that I got snagged in, which I will go into later when I talk about one of the books I myself have published. But it's essentially, is your book, the examples they give are like the difference between a notebook and a normal novel. Again, something to watch out for. And of course, the publication and release date, so when you would like your book to be released into the general public or available for purchase, that kind of thing. Once that's all taken care of, you will then be asked to provide an ISBN, that's an International Standard Book Number. Now, KDP can provide you with one of these for free, just for print publishing with them, or you are able to buy your own by going through an agency. That is completely up to you. There's also print options, which are essentially what kind of book would you like yours to be. For example, if there was illustrations and you go for a cream page with black and white, any illustrations will automatically come off as black and white or a grayscale. There's also black and white with white pages. There's also standard color, which again, I recommend looking up more in-depth videos to give you a better idea of what that's like. And there's also premium color. So it's essentially, is your book going to be black and white, or is it going to involve color? That's the kind of thing that print options will deal with. There is also trim, which is literally just the specific dimensions of your book. And again, I will get more into detail on this later on in the video, but it's literally just the size and the dimensions. There is bleed, which is literally just whether or not any images in your book will expand to the very edge of the page, or whether they'll go over or something like that. That is an option that's only available if you've uploaded a PDF on your manuscript. We'll get to that in a second. There's also whether you want glossy or matte covers, which I will go over more in detail later on in the video when I get to after what's actually required to publish with KDP. And then there's the manuscript, and that is the bulk of your book. This is essentially the main part of the book. This is the words, this is the pages, this is the thing that you wrote down. This is the book, essentially, minus the cover and such. You can upload your manuscript in different formats. You can do it in PDF, you can do it in Microsoft Word. There's a number of different ways you can do it. Something worth noting, if you're going through an ebook, however, they're currently either having problems, or they're just not allowing specific formats anymore. Again, you might be best looking up a more in-depth video about this, but it is still something to be taking into consideration. Then you'll be asked to provide a cover. Now, with the covers on KDP or Kindle, you can have one provided for you, or you are able to go down the option of uploading one yourself, which is what I did, and then it will actually provide you with a cover creator, which will show you what your cover will actually look like when it is printed and when it is done, which is very helpful and very useful. And then there would just be a question asking whether or not your book was provided with AI at all. I think that's to help curb the sheer amount of colouring books and stuff people have done, but that's besides the point. There's also a reviewer, which again, much like the cover creator, will tell you, or show you rather, what your book will look like when it is done. From page to page, it will give you page-to-page view as well as thumbnails, so you can see the grander scale of things, and it will help identify any problems that would happen if your book were to be published. I will speak about this a bit more later on in the video, as it was something I was worried about, but it did actually address it, but also did create a few problems as well. And then there's a summary, which is essentially just a culmination of all the different options that you've asked for, as well as how much your book would actually cost Amazon just to print by itself, just to have your book in existence, like the materials and the ink and such. Lastly, and before your book can be published with KDP, you will be asked to choose the territories, which is essentially just where it will be available alongside the primary marketplace, which is essentially just the version of Amazon that it will mostly be available on. So territories is just the additional parts of the world that you'll be able to buy it. Then you will be asked to decide the pricing on your book, which is essentially just how much it will cost. And then if you've gone with other territories, it will show you how much it would cost there in the respective currency, as well as royalties, which is essentially just how much you would earn based on how much you've priced it and how much it costs. And then there's a thing called expanded distribution, which is an additional option you can vouch for, which essentially means that bookshops and libraries and things such as that are also able to purchase your book, as well as just ordinary people on Amazon. And then after that, there's a terms and conditions, sort of legalese type thing that you have to sign to make sure that so that they know that you understand what you're doing and all that stuff. And then you are able to request a proof, which is essentially request a physical version of your book before it becomes available or after it becomes available, just so you can get an idea of what it's like and how it's going to look and how the pages will be and stuff like that. And again, I know it's been stated already in this video multiple times, but it is advised that you check out a more in-depth guide or video on how to publish with KDP if you do decide to publish with KDP. As again, this video just exists to give you a general idea of the kind of things you can expect if you do decide to do that. And now in this section of the video, I'm going to give you a visual, very practical demonstration of what you can expect, what you can get if you do decide to publish a paperback, specifically with KDP. And to do that, I'm going to show you two examples, which are actually books that I myself have published and currently have available. The first of which being Sneaky Penguins Rehatched, which again you can see there. Now, this is not actually the first paperback I had published with KDP, it's actually the second, but I'll get into why I've decided to show this one first in a second. Now, the first book I ever published full stop with Kindle Online was actually an ebook of essentially a collection of cartoons that I had done starring these wee guys here, called The Sneaky Penguins, which in the actual book itself I do get into more the sort of history of how that all came about, but as I said, it was originally an ebook and just sort of collection of little cartoons that I'd done, just like that. But I was never happy with the original, so I decided to just keep it as an ebook because I didn't really feel like it was. I don't feel like it was good enough to be a paperback. But it kind of niggled at me a little bit, just kind of annoyed me that it was in the state that it was. So a year later, I decided to essentially remake it entirely from the ground up. Reuse the same kind of illustrations, but tidy them up a little bit, just make them look nicer like this. And again, like, as I was saying earlier, some of the print options you can get have like grayscale or black and white, and this is kind of what I mean when I say that. You can see there is like a grey. It's not just black and white like on the frames. There's also like the sort of grey seal as well as the wee bandana he's got on, and it comes off like that. And also with this one, you'll notice that the cover reflects the light a little bit. You can kind of, one second there, you get a reflection. This is a glossy cover rather. And so this is what that looks like. Earlier on I mentioned that I would talk more about glossy or matte later on in the video. This is a glossy cover. This is what they look like. They're very, very nice looking, very shiny. That's very much the kind of thing you would usually see on a book, even one that isn't self-published, even like a professional one. It's got like, there's a back cover there. And this, in case you couldn't tell, this is not a design or cover design that was provided by Kindle on a little cover creator. This is one I actually made myself. I've nothing against like having the cover generated for you. I understand some people just don't have the means to have one illustrated or don't illustrate themselves, so that's fine. But for me personally, I like to design them. I like to draw generally, so it's good that I'm able to have that option. And I've got like a little. I like to kind of have like the flip over like that. I like to have a sense of how it's going to look. Now, interestingly, I said earlier, this is not the first book that I published as a paperback. It is a remake of the first ebook I did, but it's not the first book I published for a paperback. The first one I published as a paperback is actually the one I'm going to talk about next. But what's strange, even though this is like a lot thinner than what I'm going to talk about in a minute, so I think it only clocks in at about like, I want to say about 70 something pages, maybe slightly less, maybe 74 or something like that. But interestingly, I had a lot more trouble getting this published initially than I did with the other one, the one I'll talk about in a few minutes. And the reason for that was, one, earlier on I talked about the low content or large print books as an option, as like a hurdle that kind of caught me off guard at first. It was specifically with this one that it caught me off guard, because I thought, again, see inside, it's fairly simple. I thought, okay, maybe this is a low content book. Not so. Again, I won't really go into detail here, but essentially if you're going to be publishing something like that, like what I've done, or essentially anything other than literally a planner or a diary or something like that, then you will probably best be going with the larger print option. So that was something that caught me off guard. Another thing that caught me off guard was to do with the content of the pages themselves. Not because there was anything explicit or like, unsavory or anything, because again, you can see it's literally just penguins. Some of them are dressed up funny, and there's like a kind of story at the end, fairly kind of short story. It was because, due to the borders around the edges like that, it kept it in the previewer. Like I mentioned earlier, it gives you a previewer. You can see what it's going to look like when it's done. In the previewer, these actually kind of went outside the boundaries, like if it had been published how it originally was, like this little bit would be over here, or like kind of here, which is something to be worth noting, something to be aware of if you are going to be publishing with KDP. Now, I'm glad that it caught that, because I actually would not publish it originally, purely because of that. And while it did annoy me at the time, I'm kind of glad that they prevented it from publishing, because one of the concerns I had with my first paperback was that would happen, that it would go over the sides, that it would look unprofessional, it would look messy, something like that. But it didn't, and oddly enough, despite this first proper paperback being much longer and arguably far more detailed and more illustrated than this one, I had significantly fewer problems. I had virtually no problems with the first one, so it's odd that I would get problems with this one, but I am glad that I got problems with this one as opposed to the first one, because I think if I had problems with the first one, I'd probably been more discouraged. But in any case, this is Sneaky Penguins Rehatched. It's a remake of the first ebook I did. And again, like, understand with KDP, it doesn't, as you can see, it doesn't have to be all text. It doesn't have to be pure literature. It can be a little cartoon book like this. It can have illustrations. It can have little things like that. And again, there are options for color, as well as just black and white or grey like this. So, which is something I personally will be looking into in the future as well for other endeavors. So again, you can see and the illustrations seem a bit blurry to me, but I think that might be my fault. That's due to something I did. That's on me. That's nothing to do with Kindle, because the illustrations on the other one seem fine. But a word of warning: if you are going to publish with KDP with Kindle, specifically on a paperback like this or a hardback, there is something to be aware of. Now, I don't know if the camera can pick that up, but there's like a little line going through the pages like that. It's a little thing just kind of going through. Now, this admittedly is very rare. Like you can see, like, majority of the pages look fine. There's no kind of little line. There's no little sort of seam going down it like that. Most of them seem fine. And this is something that's, again, very rare. Most of the pages, perfectly fine. But it is something I've noticed not just in the books that I have published already, but also in other self-published books from Kindle that I bought to give myself a sense of what the final product would be like. It is a tiny bit upsetting, but again, Kindle is completely free. I paid for this copy because I wanted a copy for my own house, because I just like having something that I can feel like that, something to hold in my hand. But it is something to be aware of, something that you should know. But on the whole, I'm very happy with this. It actually only arrived a few days ago in the post, and I'm very happy about that, because it means I can include it in this video. But yeah, this is Sneaky Penguins Rehatched, as available, as you can imagine, on Amazon.com right now. And yeah, as a book, as a work of mine, I'm very happy with how it turned out. Now, the second book I would like to show you today is actually the second ebook I had available, the first being the original Sneaky Penguins, but also the first book I had available as paperback. And that I've put is this one here called Oakland, which is a sort of, to give it its full title, it's registered under Oakland, a visual novel. This is, even though the term visual novel is not, or an illustrated novel, sorry, Oakland, an illustrated novel. Even though illustrated novel is not found on the title or on the cover or anything. And that was largely done to differentiate it, to make it easier to find in the Amazon search bar, essentially. And it is essentially the first one I wanted to do, because as you can see right there, and again, much like with Sneaky Penguins, but any book you do publish does not have to be entirely literary. It doesn't have to be entirely words. It can be illustrations. And actually, fun fact about these kind of book page decorations like that, they were actually done originally out of necessity, because I tried to type it all up on Word and I just got kind of bogged down. And like I said before earlier, I like drawing, so I said essentially just draw the pages, and then I use an application I have online called Krita, Krita, and I was able to do pages like this, and I am very happy with how this book turned out, which is good, because this is actually a story I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. It's very, very personal to me, and very I feel very reflective of me as a person. It's like, without going too much into the story so I don't spoil it or anything for anyone, it's essentially the story of this guy here. His name is Asterius Oakland. He's a fairly nice guy. As you can see, he's got a kind of bag, sort of face mask thing here on his head. And again, without going into too much detail, without spoiling anything, it's essentially just the story of his life. And throughout the story, we do find out why he has it on his face. It's because he's very unfortunate looking, shall we say, and also a bit of a snag in his life. He lives in a world where sort of everyday objects, like, for example, telephones and even cars and automobiles, like, it's got a very kind of sort of turn of the century kind of 1920s 30s aesthetic on things. So there's like a tram, for example, and as I tried to give it a very kind of Art Nouveau look in some places, but all of the technology, all of the stuff that exists, runs on magic. He cannot use magic. For some reason, whenever he touches something that's magical or enchanted in the story, it just stops working. It just goes completely like kaput, like that. And again, without spoiling too much, we do find out why that is. We find out why he is the way he is. As well as stuff, the story opens with quite a few questions, and by the end, all of them are answered in one way or another. And again, to back away from the story for a bit, as I've said before, I am very, very happy with how this turned out. I'm thrilled that I was finally able to just have this in my hand, just have like a published physical version of this story and this sort of novel and stuff that I can hold and I can show you, and it's got like illustrations, and I think there's very little I would want to change about this. A bit on the logo, it's kind of, the O on the logo bit there is a bit faded, but again, I think that's probably my fault. I think it's to do with the illustration. But again, like, very little I would change apart from that. And as a side note, as I mentioned earlier, that the cover for Sneaky Penguins was glossy, and the options were glossy and matte. This cover, the one for this one specifically that I'm holding right now, is matte. It's a matte cover. It's like, again, I'm very happy with it, but that is like, it feels a bit strange. I'm absolutely going to keep this cover, but this version of the book. But yeah, I have changed it. I've actually gone into the account bit that I have, and I've actually changed this. So any versions of this book that do get published will have a glossy cover. Will have a much more professional looking. But I'm still very happy, very, very happy with it. And again, like, this is not like Sneaky Penguins that was just kind of 8 pages. This is much closer to a novel. I was actually able to get like a page count at the bottom. And again, much like Sneaky Penguins, it doesn't have to be all words. You can absolutely have illustrations. You can be, as you can see, you can have it be almost 100% illustrations, and it will still come out fine. And here's something interesting, because I mentioned with Sneaky Penguins that on occasion there'd be a little line down the page. I think it's probably just from the printing. I haven't really noticed that with this. Well, actually, there's one on one page, but again, just on one page. So I think whatever that is, it doesn't really affect black and white. It does just kind of affect it when it's like, again, grayscale, or like kind of, black and white and grey, and it's like ink wash and stuff like that. Again, I'm still very happy with how that turned out. But what's interesting is given how many pages as well, I've hardly noticed it in anything. Like, I haven't noticed any streaks. I think for the most, this book has turned out almost 100% how, the version on Word on the manuscript I uploaded turned out. And yeah, and I'm as I said before, I had problems with Sneaky Penguins, just little bits, but I'm glad I had problems with Sneaky Penguins Rehatched. I think that if I had problems with this, I might have been discouraged, but as I said before, I had virtually no problems with this. It's very lucky of me. And yeah, again, this is Oakland, an illustrated novel is the title if you're looking for it online. And again, that's not really, it's just to make it easier to find, so you can find on. Again, much like Sneaky Penguins Rehatched, it's available on Amazon right now. I will leave links to both of those in the description below. And yeah, again, this, if you're planning on publishing with KDP, this is the kind of thing that you can expect. I mentioned earlier, I talked about the trim, and trim is literally just the size and dimensions of the final product. Both Oakland and Sneaky Penguins Rehatched are both 6 inches by 9. So, like 6 inches long. 6 inches long, and then 9 inches down, like that. So that's to give you a rough idea of how big this is. There are other sizes available. I think the lowest that I saw as an option is 5 by 8, or 5 by 8 or 5 by 7, I think. And also there's an option in the trim to actually have it custom. So if you want it to be like, instead of portrait like that, you can have it like landscape like that, like an old kind of cartoon book. I think you can do that. I have not done something like that. I don't plan on doing something like that. Maybe we'll see, but it's certainly something it's certainly an option. And there's also things like 8 by 10 inches, which is closer to like a sort of traditional comic book type kind of format, which I've seen, which is also something I'm possibly looking into in the future. But yeah. Anyway, to summarize, it's been again, if you are planning on publishing with Kindle, I would recommend a more in-depth view, or writing a sort of short story, maybe like a little autobiographical thing, or just something completely random, and then uploading that, and then try to put that on sort of Kindle yourself. And again, what's important to note, you do have options once you've published it. You are allowed to go back and change things. You're allowed to update it. You're allowed to just delete it, like, if you want. Again, I think it's a good idea to just, if you're planning on doing this, do something, maybe just like recount a holiday you had one time, make it about like 60 or 70 pages, and then put it on KDP just so you can mess with it and so you can get a better grip of what it's like trying to publish something with them. And again, if you're not happy with the final result, you can always just delete it and pretend it never happened and go on your merry way. Yeah, but again, that's up to you entirely. Alright, well, that's all for today. I hope this video was helpful to you. I hope you've managed to get something from it. Again, if you're interested in either of the books that have been shown, they are both available on Amazon right now, and there will be links down below. With that, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.